Howdy folks, it's Mr. Ryan, and what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to explain to you very simply, in very simple terms, how to convert between the temperature units of Fahrenheit and Celsius. Now, I'm sure some of you have thought at one point or another, why in the world are there even two scales for temperature? You know, we've had these scales for a few hundred years now. Why in the world haven't we just come up, narrowed it down to just one of them? And why don't we just use one scale worldwide? Well, I'm sure plenty of people have tried to do that. And in fact, in science, the Celsius scale is the accepted scale. But for some reason or another, we Americans just cannot give up our love affair with the Fahrenheit scale. Now, it's really interesting, in case you're interested, and you're probably not, but if you're interested in knowing where these scales came from, the Fahrenheit scale was actually developed, or was introduced in 1724, where the Celsius scale was introduced in 1742. In fact, that's kind of an easy way to remember because you just flip the 24 and the 42. So the Fahrenheit scale has been around longer. So some people might say, well, why don't you just use the Fahrenheit scale since it's been around longer? Well, it's because the Celsius scale makes more sense. See, the Celsius scale is based on the numbers 0 and 100, where 0 degrees Celsius is the freezing temperature of water, where 100 degrees Celsius is the boiling point of water. So that makes sense. 0 to 100, water goes from freezing to boiling. So between 0 and 100, water stays a liquid. Now, Fahrenheit it's a little bit weirder. See, when he developed his scale, some people say, like the legend says, that his 0 degree was based on the temperature of the air on the day that he did the study in his city. Now, that's very relative, so it's like, who cares what temperature it was in some Dutch city in 1724 or 1720 or whenever he first started looking into it. And then for him, 100 was close. Well, actually, he used 96 degrees Fahrenheit, which was the assumed to be, at the time, believed to be the temperature of the human body. Subsequently, we understand now that it's a little bit higher than that, around 98.6, I guess depending on the person, but 98.6. So because this Fahrenheit measure is kind of relative, but Celsius is based on physical things that exist, or in particular, one physical thing, water, which is in so many things. It makes more sense in science to use the Celsius measure from 0 to 100. Well, I mean, it goes to negative and it goes above 100, but I mean, water stays in its liquid form from 0 to 100. So scientists really like Celsius. The problem is that we, in America anyway, we measure so many things in Fahrenheit that we oftentimes, for the purposes of science, we have to convert our Fahrenheit measures into Celsius. Or if somebody measures something in Celsius and we want to understand it here in America, we have to take the Celsius measure and then we have to turn it back into Fahrenheit so that we can compare it to a cold winter's day or a warm summer day or something like that, okay? So let's go ahead and do the conversion. The conversion between Celsius and Fahrenheit is so easy, and the reason it's easy is because it is a linear relationship, and linear relationships are the easiest relationships in math. The only formula that you ever need to remember goes like this. Now, your teacher may give it to you in a different formula, but this is how I remember it, and if you just remember one formula, you're good to go. Fahrenheit, your measure in degrees Fahrenheit is going to be equal to the number 1.8, which is also 9 over 5. A lot of times when you'll see this formula, you'll see it as 9 over 5. But if you're using a calculator, which I'm going to be using, then decimal will work just fine, okay? 1.8 times Celsius plus 32. Now, I'm about to show you in a few examples how using just this formula every single time will give you your correct conversion. Okay? So let's say, let's do a few examples now. Let's say that you're a nurse and you measure somebody's temperature, and their temperature comes in at 102.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, and we want to know what the Celsius measure is. Well, that's easy. Just put the 102.3 in where the F is. So we're going to put in, let me go ahead and use I'm going to use a different color here. So we're going to put 102.3 equals 1.8 times Celsius, or C, plus 32. Now, it's just an equation that you can solve, okay? So here, and the first thing you're going to do to solve this equation every time, at least when you're given Fahrenheit and solving for Celsius, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to subtract 32 from both sides. Subtract 32. So I'm going to do that in my calculator here. I've got a 102.3 minus 32 gives me 70.3. So I got 70.3 is equal to 1.8 C. And now, you know how to do this. Pretend the C is an X. What if you were in math class and you had 70.3 equals 1.8X? Well, to solve for X, you would divide by 1.8. So divide by 1.8. That's going to cancel here, and your Celsius measure, 70.3 divided by 1.8, your Celsius measure is going to be 39.055555. So let's just put 39.055. Maybe we'll put that, or 39.06 or 39.1, whatever. I'm not sure where you're going to have to go. But what that basically means is 102.3 degrees Fahrenheit is the same thing as 39.055 degrees Celsius. That's the same thing, okay? Let's try another example, same way. And let's look basically what we did. Basically what we did was we subtracted 32 from this number, and then we divided that number by 1.8. So let's see if we might be able to shortcut this. Let's say every morning, one of the things that I do every morning is I make coffee. Now, when I make coffee, one of the ways that I like to make coffee, because I love my coffee so much, I put water in a measuring cup and I put it in the microwave. And I heat it up until it's almost boiling. I like for my water to be around 200 degrees, maybe like 205 degrees, because when the water is just below boiling, it really does a good job of taking all the flavor out of the coffee grounds, okay? And then I put the coffee grounds in and I stir it up. So let's say that I get my water to be about 200 degrees Fahrenheit, right? All right. So 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And I want to know how much that is by Celsius, right? Now, it should be just below 100 degrees, because didn't we just say that 100 degrees Celsius is the boiling point of water? So this should be close to 100 degrees, okay? Well, what we did here is, and you could, listen, you could put that 200 in here and put it in your formula. 200 equals 1.8 C plus 32, and then you could do your algebraic equation. But let's think about really all we did here in this equation is step 1, subtract 32. Step 2, divide by 1.8. That's all we did. So all you have to do to make this conversion, if you got a calculator, is subtract 32 and divide by 1.8, and you're done. So let's do 200 minus 32, and that gives me 168. Then I'm going to divide that by 1.8, divide by 1.8, and I get 93.33. So that's 93.33 degrees Celsius. And didn't we just say that it should be just below 100 degrees Celsius, right? And sure enough, it is 93.33 degrees Celsius. Let's try one or two more, okay? Let's say that we are keeping some food in a refrigerator. And let's say that we're keeping that food in the refrigerator at 40 degrees Fahrenheit for some reason or another, okay? So let's say we got 40 degrees Fahrenheit, And we want to know what the temperature of that food is, or in the refrigerator. What's the temperature of that food in Celsius? Because we want to do some kind of scientific study, and the science people want it in Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. Okay? So, well, we already said, what are we going to do? Subtract 32, divide by 1.8. So, 40 minus 32, all right? Some of you are doing it in your head, and you already know the answer. Minus 32, well, that's 8. So now we're down to 8, and then divide by 1.8. Divided by 1.8, divided by 1.8, and that equals 4.44. So 40 degrees Fahrenheit is the same thing as 4.44 degrees Celsius. Okay? Well, we're only halfway done, because what we've done here in all these examples is we have converted from Fahrenheit to Celsius. Why don't we now do some examples where we convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit? Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, now we need a different formula because this one says F is equal to C, right? No, no, no. That's not how we work in math. I know that seems to make sense to you, but doesn't it make more sense to only memorize one formula? And that's the way I like to do it. And you can use this same formula to convert between Celsius and Fahrenheit. In fact, it's even easier here because we can plug a number in here for Celsius and then just do a calculation, and that'll give us our Fahrenheit. And I think you're going to like how this is going to turn out, because we're going to remember our formula here. Our formula for turning Fahrenheit into Celsius is subtract 32 and divide by 1.8. What you're going to find is that our formula for going from Celsius to Fahrenheit is simply just the opposite of those two steps. We're going to start here and go backwards. What's the opposite of division? Well, it's multiplication, right? So what we're going to do is, for Celsius, we're going to multiply by 1.8. And then what's the opposite of subtraction? Well, it's addition, right? So we're going to take that number and add 32, and that'll give us our Fahrenheit. So, remember how I said I like to put my coffee in the water when the water is just under boiling? Let's say that I've got the water at 98 degrees Celsius. Okay? And I want to convert the 98 degrees Celsius into Fahrenheit. Now, I could use my formula here. I could just plug it right into the formula. And let's see what that would look like. Fahrenheit is equal to 1.8. And now, instead of the C, I'll put 98 in here and then add 32. Well, I can just plug this whole thing right into a calculator. I can just type in 1.8 parenthesis, or times, let's just do times 98, and then add 32. Enter, and I get 208.4. So in this case, my Fahrenheit measure would be 208.4 degrees, 204. Okay? All right, well, let's see, instead of doing it with the formula, what if I just come over here and I do my opposite steps here? Instead of going subtract 32, divide by 1.8, I'll go backwards. Multiply by 1.8, add 32. So here, I'm going to do my 98 times 1.8, 176.4, add 32. Add 32, and I get 208.4. Sure enough, same answer. All right, let's do one more example. 39 degrees Celsius. 39 degrees Celsius. So, well, that's easy. We're just going to do our two steps. First, we're going to multiply by 1.8, then add 32. So, multiply, so 39 times 1.8 gives us 70.2. Then we're going to add 32, and we get 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? So, we're just going to sum up here. There's two rules. So, Fahrenheit to Celsius, subtract, then divide. Okay? On the other hand, we're going to say Celsius to Fahrenheit, you're going to multiply and then add CFMA. I don't know if that's meaningful to you, but these things, they might help you be able to figure something out, make up some sort of mnemonic device to memorize, okay? But that is the basics. Those are about 3 or 4 different strategies on how you can understand how to convert between Celsius and Fahrenheit.